In 1933, the United States government made it a crime for ordinary citizens to own gold, not just to trade it, not just to hoard it, but to simply possess it. Anyone caught with gold coins, bullion, or even certificates after the deadline could face a fine of $10,000, worth hundreds of thousands today and even 10 years in prison. Overnight, Americans were forced to surrender their most ancient form of wealth, exchanging it for paper dollars because their government demanded it. Imagine being told that the treasure you trusted, the savings you built, and the legacy passed down through generations had suddenly become illegal. This wasn't the work of criminals. It was the law, signed and sealed by the highest authority in the land, and it forever changed the course of the financial system. To understand how something this extraordinary could happen, we need to step back into one of the darkest moments in American history, the Great Depression. By 1933, the nation was shattered. 1 in 4 Americans was jobless, factories stood silent, banks were collapsing, and families were losing everything. The system was crumbling because depositors demanded gold. Under the classical gold standard, every paper dollar was backed by a fixed amount of gold, $20.67 per ounce. When confidence cracked, people rushed to withdraw real gold, draining reserves and threatening to bring down the entire financial structure. That's when Franklin Delano Roosevelt stepped in. Sworn in as president in March 1933, he inherited an economy in free fall and a banking system moments away from collapse. He needed something bold, something radical enough to stop the panic, and within weeks he acted. On April 5, 1933, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for private citizens to own most forms of gold. People had until the end of April to turn in their gold to the Federal Reserve or a member bank, receiving paper dollars at the official price of $20.67 per ounce. On the surface, the government claimed this move was necessary to stabilize the banks, stop hoarding, and give the Federal Reserve flexibility to expand the money supply. In reality, it became one of the largest forced transfers of wealth in modern times. Across the country, Americans lined up to hand over coins, bars, and even family heirlooms under threat of punishment. Some resisted, hiding gold in basements or burying it in fields, but most complied, unwilling to risk prison for defiance. Here's where it stings. After collecting the gold, the government didn't just hold on to it. In January 1934, less than a year later, the Gold Reserve Act revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, a single stroke that instantly devalued the dollar by 40%. The government had confiscated gold from its citizens at the old price, only to raise its value immediately afterward. The people handed over their wealth and Washington pocketed the profit. It wasn't a policy tweak. It was a complete reset of the rules of money. By seizing gold and devaluing the dollar, the Roosevelt administration granted itself the power to inflate the money supply far beyond what the gold standard once allowed. It enabled the government to spend and borrow more, financing the New Deal programs that would define the decade. For banks, it was salvation. The gold held through the Federal Reserve restored confidence. For the government, it was control. But for ordinary Americans, it was legalized theft. Now picture your grandparents saving gold coins over a lifetime, only to be told their savings were illegal. They're forced to surrender everything for paper that's instantly worth less. The government gains, your family loses, and there's no way to fight back. That's not a story. That's what actually happened to millions in 1933. It sparked outrage. And soon, lawsuits reached the Supreme Court in what became known as the Gold Clause cases. Many contracts at the time were written in gold clauses, agreements to repay debts in gold rather than paper currency, as protection against inflation. But by seizing gold and devaluing the dollar, the government had voided those agreements. Creditors sued, claiming their rights were stripped and their property confiscated. In 1935, the Supreme Court narrowly upheld Roosevelt's actions by a single vote, setting a chilling precedent. In times of crisis, the government could rewrite the rules of money, override private contracts, and seize wealth in the name of national interest. This wasn't just about saving banks. It was about breaking the gold standard itself. By taking gold out of private hands, Roosevelt severed the link between citizens and hard money. Paper dollars became the only legal tender, backed not by redemption, but by decree. The financial system had entered a new era, one built on trust in authority rather than trust in gold. So who really benefited from the confiscation? The government, first and foremost. By seizing and revaluing gold, Washington instantly boosted its reserves by billions, giving Roosevelt the power to fund massive public programs, expand spending, and stabilize the economy, all without raising taxes during a depression. It was a masterstroke of financial engineering and a devastating blow to the idea of private property. The banks benefited next. By transferring citizens' gold into Federal Reserve vaults, the government guaranteed the stability of the banking system and restored public confidence. The public was told it was all for the greater good, but the truth is that the same institutions that failed depositors were rescued at the expense of those depositors. Meanwhile, the wealthy and well-connected found loopholes, moving gold overseas, converting it into exempt collectibles, or disguising it in jewelry, while ordinary Americans had no such privilege. They complied or faced prison. The result was a massive upward transfer of wealth, from households to the state and its allies. The losers were obvious. Millions who believed their gold represented safety and permanence discovered that security could vanish overnight. Their wealth was taken and replaced with paper that lost value immediately after the devaluation. Those who trusted the system most lost the most. And they learned the hardest truth of all: the rules of money are not fixed. They can be rewritten in an instant with the stroke of a pen. Now fast forward to today. Why should this matter to you? Because the principle hasn't changed. When the system is threatened, governments will do whatever it takes to preserve it, even if it means stripping citizens of their wealth. In 1933, it was gold. In 2008, it was trillions in taxpayer-funded bailouts for too-big-to-fail banks. In 2013, Cyprus seized portions of citizens' deposits to save its financial system. In 2020, massive money printing during the pandemic inflated asset prices while wages lagged behind, quietly eroding the value of every paycheck. Inflation itself is a form of confiscation. You may not see agents at your door taking your gold, but every time prices rise faster than wages, the same effect unfolds. Your savings shrink, your labor buys less, and the system absorbs the difference. It's wealth transfer in slow motion, hidden in plain sight. That's the modern form of confiscation, not through force but through policy. The lesson from 1933 is simple and sobering. Never assume your wealth is untouchable, or that the system will always play by its own rules. When pressure mounts, the rules change. If the government once made gold illegal, what would stop it from freezing digital accounts, seizing pensions, or taxing assets in new ways that quietly strip wealth from savers today? The precedent has already been set. The form may change, but the intent remains. Real wealth, therefore, can't be measured by numbers on a screen. True financial freedom lies in assets and knowledge that stand outside sudden policy shifts, in skills no government can confiscate, in hard assets that retain value when paper promises collapse, and in awareness of history itself. Because when America took its citizens' gold, it wasn't called theft, it was called rescue. It was framed as patriotism, as sacrifice for the greater good. But the outcome was clear: the system survived and the people paid. History doesn't repeat, but it whispers the same warning across generations. If they could take wealth once, they can do it again. And if you don't understand how money and power really operate, you'll always be left holding paper when the rules change. So the next time a politician promises stability or a banker tells you your money is safe, remember 1933. Remember that the rules of the financial system are not laws of nature, but choices made by those in power. And those choices can turn against you in an instant. Protect yourself not with blind faith, but with knowledge, awareness, and the pursuit of real, lasting wealth. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe because history holds the answers, and I'll show you where to look.